Hello and welcome to the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo's July 20th virtual community town hall. Thank you for joining us as we continue our community conversation about flood risk. I'm Matthew Harrison, and I will be your moderator for today. And I'm also joined by several people, including Mayor Don Scott, Jamie Doyle, the municipality's Chief Administrative Officer, our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Matthew Huff, from our Planning and Development Department, Director Brad McMurdo, and Manager of Community Development Planning, Christopher Booth, as well as our Municipal Legal Counsel, Kurt Stillwell. And joining us on the phone, we also have Jen McManus, the Vice President of the Canadian Red Cross, Alberta and Northwest Territories. So thank you to all our panelists for joining us this evening. As a little bit of history on the town hall and the origins of this topic, at the June 23rd council meeting, administration started the community conversation about flood risk and how we address that risk in the future. And then at the July 14th council meeting, administration tabled a report on improving community resilience. Now, this was a report that included a number of different approaches to flood-prone areas, and those approaches ranged from limiting development to buyouts and land swaps. So if you want to view that report and learn more about the topic, we encourage you to visit participate.rmwb.ca, and you'll find the full report. We'll also have the council presentation up there and other resources so that you can learn more about this topic. And the purpose of today's town hall is to hear from you, our residents. We want to hear your thoughts on how we move best forward as a region. So participate and share your thoughts. Please reach out to us. Hit *3 on your phone to get in the queue so that you can share your thoughts or that you can ask a question. Now, before we get into the actual conversation and we open up the phone lines and check out the online feedback, I'm going to invite Mayor Scott to provide some remarks to help frame this evening's conversation. Mayor Scott?
Thank you very much, Matthew, and good evening, everyone. As always, I would like to start by acknowledging that this town hall is taking place on Treaty 8 and unceded Métis territory. I'd like to thank everyone who's on the line and who participated in advance by sending in questions. So much for participating. This is an important community conversation on flood risk. We are here this evening to answer your questions and to hear from you about how we should approach that topic. Just by way of background, our region has had 17 floods since 1835. And to date, we have spent $150 million and invested that in flood mitigation. I hope that everyone has had the chance to review the report called Improving Community Resilience, and that was presented to Council last week. It is available through participate.rmwb.ca, as is the survey of feedback that we received. That was an online survey. I strongly encourage everyone, especially those impacted by this year's flood, to let me, my council colleagues, and your administration know your perspective on how we should move forward. I'd like to thank all those who have already engaged. You can always contact me at mayor@rmwb.ca or learn more at rmwb.ca/recovery, and I will copy all my council colleagues so that everyone sees every point of view. On Tuesday, July 28th, there will be a special council meeting where we will again discuss our options as a community. You can register as a delegate by teleconference or by sending in a written submission for the record. Please contact legislative.assistance@rmwb.ca or call 780-743-7001. Registration closes Monday, July 27th at noon for delegations. It's really important that we hear from you, so please consider participating in that July 28th meeting. You can also join us for a Facebook Live event this Thursday, July 23rd at 2 p.m., where we will be available to answer your questions. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you and any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mayor Scott. And I'd now like to turn the floor over to Matthew Huff, our Deputy CAO. He's been leading the flood recovery program thus far, and so I'd like to invite him to say a few words.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Huff. I am the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer here at the RMWB. I'd like to welcome everyone on the line and streaming from our website to our first town hall on flood risk. We have two goals here tonight. One is to answer your questions. We might not have all the details you're looking for, but we'll answer as well as we can. The other goal is to continue the conversation. The decision before us, how to protect our community from floods, is one of the biggest decisions we will ever have to make. This decision must consider community input. We'd like to hear your opinions about the approaches to flood risk as identified in the Improving Community Resilience Report. The report is available for download at participate.rmwb.ca. I'd also like to remind everyone to participate in the Council meeting on July 28. You can share your opinions by video conference, teleconference, or email. To register, email legislative.assistance@rmwb.ca or call our pulse line at 780-743-7001 by noon on July 27. Finally, as mentioned by Mayor Scott, we're hosting a Facebook Live event on flood risk this Thursday at 2 p.m. I look forward to your participation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Matthew. And now we're going to turn to you. So if you'd like to share your thoughts on the subject or ask a question, please hit *3 on your phone and you'll be connected to an operator and we'll get you in the queue. So we'll begin with some questions that have come from our online stream. The first question is from Gordon, and Gordon asks, why was there no talk with the residents in the proposed buyout plan? I would like to know the definition the city is using for buyout and how will properties be valued. The city has done a great job in devaluing the neighborhood in the last few years. Brad, our Director of Planning and Development, Brad McMurdo, could you comment on this, please?
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Gordon. Great question. The buyout is a concept that we've introduced, the municipality has introduced to the community. In order to move forward, we are seeking community support, and if pursued, we intend to negotiate with property owners in good faith. The resiliency report that was mentioned that we posted online contemplates assessed values. So those are values that we had available during the development of the report. Moving forward with the buyout as a consideration, we would have to look at other scenarios such as getting appraised value for individual properties.
Thank you, Brad. And I would just add to that as well, to Gordon, to your concern about not talking with residents about the proposed buyout plan. So the phase that we're in right now is part of an engagement phase where we're looking to hear from residents. So what was presented to Council on July 14th is really some proposed approaches. So Council hasn't actually approved that or agreed to move ahead with that. That's just a conversation starting point. So that's why this part of the conversation is so important, that residents weigh in, that they participate in a town hall like this, that they visit the website and provide their feedback, and that they also participate in the July 28th meeting. So we're definitely looking to hear from our residents to try and get a sense of what folks think about those different approaches. Looking at our next question, we have Michael asking, when do you think a decision will be made on Ptarmigan Park? I will turn to our Deputy CEO, Matthew Huff, on that. Matthew?
Thank you for the question. As will be the case for our recommendations to Council on all 5 flood-prone areas, we will be presenting that to Council on July 28. So again, as mentioned earlier, I encourage everyone to participate in this conversation between now and then. Take a look at the technical report, understand the premise of the report thus far, and understand that your opinion is going to drive the final decisions. Assuming Council provides administration direction on July 28, administration will continue to work to develop and detail the way ahead for all of the areas.
Thank you, Matthew, for that. Again, if you'd like to ask a question online, on the phone, please hit *3 on your phone to ask that question and speak to an operator. Our next question comes from Mary, and Mary asks, why are you trying to buy people's properties that are above the 250-meter mark? So why are you trying to buy people's properties above the 250-meter mark? And I'll turn to Chris with Planning and Development on that.
Thank you very much for the question, Mary. This primarily pertains to the community of Draper, and the reasons for this are twofold. For one, residents in Draper did raise with us geotechnical concerns post-wildfire on the hillside properties or those above the 250 primarily. The second point under consideration was that there is a single access road that is relied upon by both residents above and below 250 meters.
Thanks very much, Chris. If you have a question and you'd like to ask it, please hit *3 on your phone. Now is a great time to get in early in the queue. So *3 to ask your question. We have a number of questions coming up related to Longboat Landing. In fact, we've received 4 or 5 just off the top, and we're going to turn to Brent. Brent is joining us live on the phone. Brent, you're live. Feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, hello. I'm just, I think I'd like to have the inclusion of Longboat Landing separate from downtown part of this conversation. It's a unique community, much like Ptarmigan Court is to waterways. So what steps can be taken to include, especially the affected units? There's still people displaced from Longboat Landing. So what about getting them part of this discussion?
Thanks very much, Brent. Now, that came up at our council meeting on July 14th as well. So I'm going to turn that over to Matthew, I believe, who's going to comment on that.
Yes, thank you for the question. Indeed, that was a question posed to administration at the council meeting on July 14, and our answer was quite quick to that question. Longboat Landing will be considered as a standalone community, making it the 6th area that we are evaluating.
Great, thank you, Matthew. A question coming in now from Elaine. Why not use the money that will be paid to people with no insurance, especially in areas like waterways, to use to buy them out before any further fixing up occurs? So I believe that's in reference to DRP funding, and I'll turn that over to Matthew Huff again.
DRP funding, or Disaster Relief Program funding, is a program administered by the provincial government, whereas the province identified up to $100 million to be put towards the very thing that you speak of, that is uninsurable losses. It's not a program that the RMWB ultimately administers. We are certainly encouraging all affected property owners to be registered for the DRP program, and while I have the opportunity, I'll mention that the deadline for that is August 7, so please be registered whether you think that you're eligible or not. We want to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to take advantage of that program. But as far as dollars that would be required to finance the way ahead, to finance buyouts, for example, that is yet to be identified. It would either come from our own budgets, the RMWB budgets, or from senior levels of government. And I'm sure that a little later in this call, the Mayor will likely speak to that very matter. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Matthew. And now I just wanted to bring into the conversation here Jen McManus, who's with the Canadian Red Cross. And the Red Cross is actually going to be assisting folks if they're having challenges filling out the DRP applications. Now, Jen, I'm wondering if you could maybe comment on that for a minute.
Yes, thanks, Matthew. So in partnership with the Government of Alberta and our ongoing work with RMWB, the Canadian Red Cross is pleased to offer help to community members that are completing or starting their applications for the disaster recovery program. We are here to assist people with getting their documentation organized, helping them upload their application requirements. And we can be reached by calling 1-800-863-6582. And by calling that number, you can speak with a Red Cross representative. We can talk about your personal situation. We can book an appointment for you to meet with one of our team members, either on the phone or in person at our Franklin Avenue location. Of course, we are still in COVID-19, Matthew and everybody, so we'll be asking for people to uphold public health protocols, but we're here to assist. I just want to also clarify that we are not adjudicating the DRP process. That is the government of Alberta, which Matthew has just explained, but we are definitely here to assist community members understand what they need to have organized, how they do it. We've been working with the DRP team, getting an orientation to the process, so the Red Cross team is here to continue on the journey to help households make some decisions and to get their applications in by August 7th. So thanks.
Thank you, Jen. And yes, also, of course, the application can be accessed at alberta.ca/DRP. This evening is really about getting feedback from our residents, and we want to hear from you. Doesn't have to be a question. You can just call up and share your thoughts on what you're thinking about some of these different approaches that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks in the community. So please, *3 on your phone to join the conversation and get in the queue now while there's an opportunity to share your thoughts on this important community conversation. We are going to the phone lines now. I'd like to welcome Michelle. Michelle, you are live. Hello, Michelle.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Michelle.
I live in Ptarmigan Park, and I was wondering if we were over the 250 here, because we built up after the fire. We did everything we were supposed to do after the fire. We're on piles. We raised our property. If we're over the 250, which we're going to find out, we're going to figure it out. If we are exempt from from having to move, because we don't want to move. We want to stay here. We bought down here for a reason.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Brad, is that something you could comment on, please?
Thank you, Matthew. Good question, Michelle. As I mentioned, with respect to the buyout process, again, it's one that we want to do in partnership with the community, and again, it's something that's an ongoing conversation as we speak. So Matthew touched on that. The intent of tonight's meeting is to receive feedback. At this point in time, we've put forward some findings in the resiliency report that were based on ongoing discussion with several different stakeholders and technical folks. And so the outcome that we arrived at, we've detailed in the report, which was a full buyout for consideration. Again, understanding that the process with respect to buyout is still being explored, and that hinges tremendously with community feedback. So there hasn't been any decisions at this point in time, and so we continue to have the conversation with the community.
All right, thank you, Brad. Michelle, are you still on the line?
Yeah.
Are you still there?
I am.
So I'm wondering, have you had an opportunity to speak with your neighbors about this approach that is being proposed, and what they may have thought about it?
Well, everybody has mixed feelings. Some, like we never even had water come onto our lot when this flood happened. We were totally dry, so we're obviously high enough because that was a lot of water. And some neighbors want to stay, some want to move. Like like I can understand why some people want to move, but I do not want to move. We want to stay. We bought down here for a reason, so.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you, Michelle, for taking the time out of your schedule to join us for this conversation. Again, if you want to share some feedback on this topic, please *3 to ask your question or share your thoughts. We're going to go again to the phone lines, and we are turning over to Rick. Rick, you're live on the line.
Good evening. Yeah, to get a sense of the severity of this flood and to get a sense of where our properties are with regards to elevation, can somebody on the panel tell us what elevation the water was for this flood and where that compared to previous floods?
Okay, thank you, Rick. Matthew, could you address that question, please?
Yes, thank you for the question. So the flood level is measured on the Athabasca, and for a period of time, the Athabasca River reached the 1 in 100 year level. So that is the required minimum design elevation set for our flood mitigation berms. In fact, we build them at 250.5 to have a freeboard. So just to explain what 1 in 100 means, it means that each year or next year rather, there is a 1% chance of the same flood occurring again. But as the years pass, the percentage increases, so the likelihood of a similar flood occurring increases. It's not, it goes up to 9.6% after 10 years and 39.5% after 50 years based on the statistics. Since 1873, there have been a multitude of floods, one of which hit the 1 in 350 level, which is greater than the level that it hit this time, of course. There's more information on this referenced online. Please take a look at it. The province of Alberta will be releasing some flood hazard maps in the coming days also, which will also inform our conversation as we go forward.
Great. Thank you very much, Matthew, for that information. We're going to continue to take the live call, so I understand that we have Jimmy on the line. Jimmy, you're live.
Hi. I was just wondering how qualified am I? I spoke briefly with Brian Jean, and he seemed to think that I'm qualified. I'm just off Centennial, Birch Road, right off Centennial. I just want to know if that area is being considered as well, for buyouts, of course.
And that's Centennial, just over by Composite High there, by Cano, is that right? Well, we'll assume it is. Chris, could you address that, please?
Thank you very much for that question. The buyouts were not proposed. They were not one of the proposed approaches for portions of downtown at this time, according to the evaluation that we've conducted thus far. But that being said, the conversation is still ongoing. Council did recently agree to parse out certain portions of the downtown for analysis, namely Longboat Landing. What I would recommend in this instance is anyone who is interested in questions of that nature, participate in this upcoming July 28th council meeting. That would probably be a very good avenue to proceed with. Anyone who's interested in doing so can email legislative.assistance@rmwb.ca or call 780-743-7001 before 12 o'clock noon on July the 27th.
Thanks very much, Chris, for answering that. And I would just add also, in terms of the participation in the July 28th council meeting, that people can submit their thoughts and their feedback on these approaches via email. It can be a written statement. We've already had some received. And then delegations who wish to participate from more of a teleconferencing point of view, that's where that deadline that we ask people to register by noon on the Monday. That just lets our legislative services folks know how many people they're expecting, and it just helps out administratively. So please do get involved in that conversation. Speaking of conversation, if you want to share your thoughts and your feelings on some of these approaches, please *3 on your phone to get in the queue and speak to an operator so that we can hear from you and your fellow residents can hear from you as well. We're going to turn now to Nebahat, who will also be joining us live on the line, and he has a question about DRP. Go ahead, you are live.
Hi, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to ask a question here. Actually, I have a bunch of questions. I'll be very specific with my details. I live in Water's Edge condo, which is the building where Napa Auto Parts is. It's on King Street. We were evacuated, and we haven't gone back to our building yet. Every month, they give us another month to move back in. But all the dates that they have given us so far had been anticipated, and the recent one is October 1st, and again, that's not confirmed. At this point of time, we are paying our condo fee, our mortgage, and our rent as well, even though we are not utilizing any of the condo amenities, but we are still forced to pay our condo fee. And in this scenario, nobody is here to hear us out or help us out because we are very tight on our finances and we don't know where to go. When we call the emergency services, they say that you can only contact us if you have the eviction notice in your hand. That's the case where we will be able to help you a little bit. But of course, we don't want to get to that point with my little one and my family where I have to, have nothing in hand. I want to plan ahead. Second question is that apartment building was completely flooded, the parkade. I want to know if the Water's Edge condo, which is on King Street, is also in consideration for buyouts. My third question is, we have applied for DRP program. We applied on May 14th. Our evaluation has been conducted as well, but we still don't know if we'll be getting any assistance or anything because at this point, either we want to move back into our place ASAP. We want somebody to at least inquire about the status, why they are taking so long. If there is anything that we can do, maybe they can do from the government end. We don't know who to approach, who to talk about. This matter is kind of personalized where nobody tells you anything, but we are kind of like blind here. Secondly, we want to know if there is any funding. When are you guys going to make your decisions about giving people some financial assistance so that they can cope up with this time where we are on top of our mortgage and condo fee, also paying out rents out of our pockets? This is the major concern we have at this point. And either Red Cross or emergency services, we have tried everyone and nobody can help us out at this situation. They all say you apply for DRP and wait for the decision. But when is this happening? Either you are providing us with funding or you're planning out buyout, but at least we want to know a clear picture. Please help us out here.
Thank you very much, Nebahat. It sounds like you've been through quite an ordeal, and I'm sorry to hear about that. There's a couple of people here on the panel that I think can address some of your concerns anyways, and Mayor Scott wanted to weigh in, so I'm just going to start with Mayor Scott here.
Yeah, DRP funding is provincial, so it's not a decision that's made by council or anyone on our administrative team. So there's two MLAs that we have in the region who are both very helpful. One is Tanya Yao and the other is Layla Goodrich. I'm going to give you the phone number for each of their constituency offices in case you haven't reached out to them yet. So Layla Goodrich's constituency office is 780-588-7979, and Tanya Yao's constituency office is 780-790-6014. Please reach out to them and tell them that you're not hearing back on your DRP application, and they should be able to facilitate that going forward. That's as far as the DRP application is concerned, and I think you asked a couple of other questions that my colleagues might be able to answer.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. Jen, I'm wondering if you could also maybe weigh in on this too.
Yes,
Jen from the Red Cross.
Yes, thanks, Matthew. Nebahat, I was wondering, I know that the amazing communications team that's facilitating this town hall has your contact information. If you would be comfortable and you're still on the line, if I could get your number and then we can have my team call you back and we can have an offline discussion. Obviously, everybody's situation is unique, and we'd like to give you a call back and work through some particulars that you're feeling. Also, in follow-up to Mayor Scott and the two MLAs, the Canadian Red Cross can also follow up on the DRP application on your behalf as well. So if I could contact you or the Red Cross team could contact you, that would be great. Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks, Jen. And it's my understanding that Nabahat's not on the line anymore, but we do have her contact information, so we can look at connecting you two together. So, and Mayor Scott has another thing to add.
Sure. You asked if the downtown was being considered for buyouts. So the only area that's being separately considered from the downtown right now is Longboat Landing, but the downtown at this time is not being considered. At least that's the administrative recommendation to date. It's not being considered for a buyout. I think that was one of your other questions.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. We're just going to turn to a couple of questions now that are coming in for those who are streaming online. This first question is going to go to our CAO, Jamie Doyle. Joel asks, if homes are bought out by the RMWB, can the rest of us expect huge increases in our property taxes and utility bills to make up for the cost? Jamie, could you comment on that?
Thanks, Matthew, and thanks for the question. To provide, a specific tax increase regarding buyouts and thereof, it's really hard to determine that just yet. It would really depend on the costs when it's all said and done. However, flood mitigation efforts have been and will be taxed over the next 6 years. To speak to an increase in those taxes as a result of that is a little bit easier, but still difficult to put a number to. Each year, as we tax, we try to keep the tax rate married to property values to keep the property taxes minimal, keeping in mind that we have some of the lowest taxes in the province.
And thank you, Jamie, for that. While we're still talking about buyouts, there is another question that I'd like it if you could address as our CEO. It's from Kel, and he's asking, or she's asking, if buyouts of certain areas do occur, what will be done to protect the value and safety of adjacent properties?
Thanks again, Matthew. Should that happen, and if the organization through planning development and their land administration group, and if we're buying some of those areas out, we would certainly endeavor to apply protective land use zoning and restrictions to ensure public safety.
All right, thank you very much, Jamie. We are going to turn to live questions again. And again, if you have feedback to provide on this topic, as we talk about flood risk and regional resiliency, please hit *3 on your phone to get in the queue to share your feedback or ask your question. Let's go to David, who's patiently waiting for us on the phone line. David, you are live.
Hi, thank you, Jamie. Given the fact that this senior leadership team and the council mayor have failed to protect this community, failed to follow through on building a proper defense, and although repeatedly warned since 2014, are you going to step down and do an investigation and take a course of action so that we can put people in place that will follow through and complete what should have been started and was started back in 2012, instead of spending more money on fixing mistakes that you, the leadership team, have made?
Okay, David, thank you for that. So from what I understand from your question, essentially you're asking why wasn't the proper infrastructure put in place prior to the flood this year, and I wonder maybe if Matthew can comment a little bit on this.
Yes, and I'll start by saying I take exception to the suggestion that those involved at this time have not been working very hard on ensuring that all infrastructure is in place, and that goes for the administration and the council. So that's first. The second, I encourage you and all residents to read up on the history of flood mitigation in our area. It's true, this has been a discussion, debate that has gone on for decades. Post-wildfire, there were discussions and decisions made based on the information at that time. At the same time, there were plans being advanced to construct the flood mitigation berm. Since then, $150 million has been spent on the Clearwater Drive, which doubles as a flood mitigation berm. Those reaches, as we refer to them, are reaches 1 to 4. Reaches 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 are all slated to be undertaken this year. But what the 2020 flood did was remind us of the severity of these floods, even at the level that we saw this year. So it was time to take another close look at our approach to flood mitigation and resiliency of our community. So I hear your frustration, but rather than spending our time advancing the suggestion that you put forward, I suggest and I ask all residents in our region to become informed and engage in this conversation with us about how we take the next step.
Thank you, Matthew. And one of those ways, of course, is to participate in a town hall like this evening to share your thoughts. So thank you, David, for sharing that, and for all the others who have called in, and those who are waiting in the queue line. We have several live calls that are still in the queue. We have lots of questions coming from online. So, we apologize if we aren't able to get to all your questions this evening. We only have about 20 minutes left. But again, if you have any thoughts or comments on this, please participate in the July 28th council meeting, or please email townhall@rmwb.ca with your feedback on the different approaches. All that being said, again, *3 will get you in the queue so that you can share your thoughts. And also, as a new kind of feature to our town halls, at the conclusion of the town hall, if you're joining us on the phone, you'll be given an option to leave a voicemail, so you can share your ideas about the different approaches. All that being said, I will turn back to the phone lines, and we're going to take another live call. This call is from Oleg. Oleg, you are live.
Oleg. My question is just a follow-up to the thought to buy out the residential properties of those individuals that stay along the river at the present market value. And if that is the case, what happens on the difference between the purchase cost and the market value, and how is this going to mitigate the risk that is already faced by the residents that are affected?
Thanks very much, Oleg. That's a great question, and that's something that we saw questions about as part of the initial phase of the survey that we had between the end of June up to July 9th, where people were asking, well, if there's going to be a buyout, what is the compensation? Is it the current market value, or does it include a mortgage? So I know that's on a lot of people's minds. I'm going to turn to our Director of Planning and Development, Brad McMurdo. And Brad, if you could please comment on this, that would be great.
Thank you for the question. As mentioned, the report, the resiliency report, touches on the 2020 assessed values. Moving forward, if this is a option that garners the support from the community and is supported by Mayor and Council, then we would have to assess all of the properties. The assessed value would likely be the fair market value, although we haven't concluded what that process looks like in terms of coming up with the total costs associated with a potential buyout as an option. So the conversation with respect to what that could or could not include is still ongoing. It's still a conversation that we're having internally. So I don't have a specific answer in terms of what may or may not be included, but it is something that we are cognizant of. We're aware that there's other costs that people have incurred post-flood, and therefore we are examining that very hard. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. And Oleg, if you're still there, if I might ask, what do you live in one of the neighborhoods that are identified in the report? That would be either Waterways or Draper, Ptarmigan Court, or the downtown area.
No, I just live here at Denholm Gate.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Just behind the Home Hardware.
Right. Okay. So, have you, do you, in what you've seen in the report, do you agree with a buyout option? Do you think that is the best route? I know Denholm Gate would be considered part of the downtown, so that was more related to development options and modifications to the land use bylaw. But is that something that you would like consider then, the buyouts?
I think the buyout option can only be fair if it is going to leave the residents without being indebted to the banks. Because if it buys out residents and then, and it leaves residents with a huge cost indebted to the banks, it's not going to be worth it, in my personal view.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Oleg. I know that's certainly weighing on a lot of people's minds. Of course, the changing in the housing market, of course, has left a lot of people in some challenging situations. So thank you for calling in, for sharing your thoughts on this, Oleg. We're going to move to another live question, but I would just remind folks that in the about 15 minutes remaining, if people do want to share some thoughts and offer their opinion on some of these different approaches, to please hit *3 on their phone. But for now, we are going to go to Carl. Carl, you're live.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for this time. Quick question is, what happens within a community when some of the homeowners want to go for the buyout and some of the homeowners decide not to go for the buyout? How do you guys will proceed?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Carl. Very valid question there. I'll turn it over to our DCO, Matthew Huff. Matthew, could you address that?
Buyouts could be one tool used to help increase community resilience. Whatever the outcome of this conversation, of this work that we're doing right now, we want to move forward with community support. Expropriations are possible. However, they are a tool of last resort. If buyouts are pursued, we intend to negotiate with property owners in good faith. Our Director of Planning and Development, Brad McMurdo, spoke to that earlier this evening. We're not at the stage of last resort at this time, so we haven't fully examined the possibility of expropriations or related compensation. So at this time, we're really seeking what residents, what property owners' view are of the development options that have been put forward. Again, please keep letting us know. That, for us, is the most important part of this evening and over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you very much, Matthew. I'm going to take one more live call, and then we're going to do some polling. We have some quick questions that we'd like residents to weigh in on. But first, let's hear from Dale. Dale, you're live on our town hall.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to say thank you very much, guys, for your response. First, I went through the wildfire and I went through the flooding, and if I have to be anywhere during those events again, I would like it to be here, because from what I saw, there was a plan in place, no hesitation, and you guys took care of it very efficiently and very safely. So, thank you very much for that. My concern is, though, given the fact that I live in the Denholm Gates area, like the other caller. I'm on Fontaine Crescent, and given the fact that homes were approved to be built here, I guess it would have been considered in some kind of risk assessment being adjacent to the river, and we are experiencing these events. I think that I would like to know that you also include the Denholm Gates Fontaine Crescent area as part of the buyout, because in conversation with the residents in this area, they're all very disappointed that we were not a part of that initial assessment. And I know I would like that option. And in keeping with the other caller, buyout at current property values is pretty much meaningless, because no one would want to come and live here knowing that you have a potential to flood. And I do know that you're planning on building a berm. I can see from my unit some mitigations that are potentially being put in place, but I also have photos of water coming up through the sewers. So they'll find a place to go, regardless of your surrounding. They'll find the lowest spot and they'll settle there. Is there any consideration? Well, I know the question's been asked before, but I would ask that you please consider the Denholm Gates Fontaine Crescent area.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Yes, actually, that did come up earlier in our call. The consideration for Longboat Landing being considered as its own entity apart from the downtown. I don't know, Matthew, if you wanted to weigh in on that, or sorry, Brad, our Director of Planning and Development. Brad's just going to offer comment on that, Dale.
Thank you for the question, Dale. We are, in fact, parsing out, as my colleague Christopher Booth mentioned, the Longboat Landing area. As we presented the report on July 14th, Council sought, in their wisdom, actually, to pull that area out of the downtown and both appreciate and recognize its uniqueness with respect to its location and proximity to the river, as well as the flood mitigation that is planned. So we are, in fact, examining Longboat Landing. That analysis is underway, and we hope to present that back to Council very shortly here on the 28th.
Thanks very much, Brad. Now, Dale, you said that you had spoken with your fellow neighbors, and they're also in agreement that they would like to be considered in terms of a buyout for this area. Is that correct?
100%. A good portion of us were all at the water park close by yesterday, just enjoying the day, and that was the conversation among us all. Because we're concerned that we're not approved for flood insurance due to our proximity to the river, and we're in a flood zone. And we were all the area was built knowing that it's within that proximity, so it would be a potentially flawed risk assessment that was done, or maybe the risk has changed over the years. Whatever the case is, this is what we're in to no fault of our own. We all want to have like a nice, safe place to live and raise our kids and not have to worry about this. So I could speak on behalf of them all that they would like to, definitely entertain the buyout.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to call in, and certainly for being that voice among your neighbors. We appreciate your feedback. We are running to, I'd say, less than 10 minutes left in our town hall. We'll be able to take a couple more questions, but we also want to run through a couple of polls very quickly we have that I think will help us just in engaging our residents further. So I'm going to go through the question. I'll give some options. There's not a lot of options. It's very straightforward, kind of yes, no, undecided kind of questions. But if you can answer these polls, it will help us a great deal. So the first poll: while still following COVID-19 guidelines, would you like in-person engagement opportunities? So whether it's an open house or some kind of drive-through engagement, would you like in-person engagement opportunities to comment on these different approaches and to weigh in on this conversation? Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no, press 3 for undecided or you're not sure. And that's, of course, pressing 1, 2, or 3 on your phone. If you're joining us from a flood-affected area, have you applied for DRP funding as of yet? And again, the DRP funding deadline is August 7th, and you can apply at alberta.ca/DRP. So if you're in a flood-affected area, have you applied for DRP funding? On your phone, press 1 for yes, or press 2 for no. This next question is going to be specific to some of the approaches that we're discussing, and specifically in the downtown area. In the proposed approaches for the downtown, one suggestion is to limit existing development below 250 meters and prohibit new development below 250 meters. So limit existing development and prohibit new development, all below 250 meters in the downtown. Do you agree with this approach? On your phone, press 1 for yes, press 2 for no, or press 3 for I need more information before answering. Again, that's 1 for yes, 2 for no, or 3 for more information before you can answer a question about that. Do you plan to participate in the council meeting on July 28th? And by participating, we mean either sending in feedback if it's an email or registering to be on the phone as a delegate. Do you plan to participate in that July 28th council meeting? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no, or 3 for undecided or you're not sure yet. Again, on your phone, press 1 for yes, 2 for no, or 3 for undecided. You're not sure if you're going to participate in that July 28th special council meeting. And our last poll, would you be interested in participating in another town hall event, an event like what we're having this evening? On your phone, press 1 for yes, press 2 for no, or press 3 for undecided, you're not sure. Again, would you be interested in participating in another town hall event where you can ask questions or provide feedback on flood risk? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no, or 3 for undecided. So thank you very much for participating in those polls. That helps us in shaping, providing the different options for residents to get involved. We're going to take a question from our online audience. You know, I do apologize. We've received a lot of questions this evening. We haven't had a lot of online engagement with folks, but again, please visit participate.rmwb.ca. There's some forums there where you can provide comments. You can email townhall@rmwb.ca as well with your thoughts. This question comes from Sylvia, and the question is the provincial government aware of Parsons Creek land swap and prepared to release the land in the event that this buyout or swap proceeds? How quickly would that land be acquired? So the question that Sylvia is really asking is if there's a land swap or movement of people from certain designated areas over to Parsons Creek, can we have access to that land from the provincial government? I'll turn over to our Director of Planning and Development, Brad McMurdo, to weigh in on that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I can confirm that the province of Alberta, or the government of Alberta, is aware of the concept of a land swap. I'll preface my response by saying that the municipality does not own the land in the areas that we've described in the report, so Parsons Creek as well as Saline Creek. And then so a discussion with the respective property owners. In the case of Parsons, it would be the government of Alberta. In the case of Saline Creek, it would be the individual property owners that own the property. So we would have to have that conversation with all of them, and the conversation has started. It is ongoing. With respect to Parsons Creek, there are about 350 hectares of shovel-ready land, for both communities. Parsons Creek has the benefit of a lot of infrastructure already being in the ground, put in by the province to support development. The zoning, the land use zoning, or land use classification in another way, is in place. So it is ready to accommodate development. I can't speak to whether or not the province is committed to this or not, nor can I speak to how quickly it can transpire or can basically the transaction can go through if they are interested. However, it is something that we are committed to exploring, and the province has also indicated that as well.
Thanks very much, Brad. And I'm also going to ask our CEO, Jamie Doyle, if he could weigh in on this as well. I know he's been having conversations with different levels of government related to this. Jamie?
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Brad, for the answer as well. Brad's very accurate in his description, and I certainly have been having conversations with the levels of government to broach that topic of titling that land to the RMWB, so we're in a position where we can, with flexibility, be land swapping. Now, we haven't gotten too far into that conversation, as you all understand that this conversation is still very new, and we're still working through all those questions and answers as we keep going. As for the time frame, it's hard to say how long it would take to flop that over to us, but it would be not unlike going through traditional land titles if you're buying and selling land. So conversations are being had. They've been positive so far. So I'll leave it at that, but it is something that we're aggressively looking into.
Thanks very much, Jamie, for weighing in to that as well. Folks, we've pretty much run out of time here. I'm going to give Mayor Scott an opportunity to conclude, and just as part of his closing remarks, I also want to frame a question that did come into us online, and perhaps you could work it into your final comments, Mayor Scott. And that question is, what are some considerations that Mayor Scott that you think should be considered or weighed?
Well, thanks for that. And a lot of the considerations have been stated this evening through various points and questions. A few that I'd like people to think about as we go forward is insurance. I think many of you realize at the last council meeting there was a discussion between myself and the CAO, and the updated number of insurance claims that we're aware of, and there could be more that we're not aware of, exceeded $400 million regarding this event. That's in addition to the $100 million that we received in DRP funding. So one of the concerns I have in the future for each of these areas that we're discussing is the availability of insurance at a reasonable price. And I'm very concerned about that. Particularly, we're seeing shifts with condominiums in particular, but it could expand in the future. So that's something to be aware of. And the availability of flood insurance in the future. If insurance companies are paying out large amounts for floods like this and what's happened down south and in other areas, will this still be a product that is available in the future? The other concern that I have is that many people owe more than what their property may be worth, and I think we've heard that this evening, and that's going to be a real challenge to deal with, particularly if we're talking about buyouts or swaps and how that's going to be conducted. The other thing I just want to let people know is that we have, and my colleague Jamie can confirm this, the province has signaled that DRP, and that's the provincial funding, may not be available as it is now in the future. So that's something that we need to have a serious look at, because that's driving some of this. So if disaster relief funding is not available and insurance is not available at a reasonable cost, that is going to leave residents in a difficult position. So we just need to at least factor that in. Now, no decision has been made by the provincial government, but we've certainly received signals that there's going to be changes potentially in the future. So that's something that we are certainly factoring in. Another factor is, of course, the safety of our first responders as we go forward. We want to make sure that they are kept safe with whatever the resulting decisions are in this. And we want to make sure that we're setting up residents for success and that they have the ability to sell property in the future. One of the challenges with insurance is usually to get a mortgage you need insurance. So if somebody's coming along and they're having difficulty getting insurance at a reasonable cost, that is going to make it difficult for people to sell property. So that's just another factor I think that we need to take into account. The last factor is something that was just discussed, which was that other levels of government have not confirmed their level of participation in this yet, and that's as far as contributing to berms or flood mitigation or to buyouts or swaps. In order to do the swaps, which is just discussed, we would need land. That has not been confirmed yet, and we have made requests for contributions toward flood mitigation, and that has not been confirmed yet. So those are all factors that, in addition to everything that was discussed this evening, which are all good points raised by many residents, these are just additional concerns that I have. So I would just, those will all be discussed on the 28th. All my council colleagues are extremely concerned about this issue, I can tell you that. And we want to hear from as many residents as possible. You don't have to appear in person on the 28th, and that's not permitted anyway at this time. Everything is happening electronically. I would encourage people to please participate either by sending in a written submission or by participating online by calling in. There's different ways to do it, and there's plenty of opportunity. We want to hear from everybody on this, and that's often what drives the decision. The people that participate are often what really help us understand what's happening in each of the different areas, and each different area has many different considerations. So please participate on the 28th if you're able. Back to you, Matthew.
Thanks very much, Mayor Scott. Thank you for that mention of the July 28th council meeting. And if residents would like more information on how to register and how to participate, they can visit rmwb.ca/council, and there's a section that says participating in council meetings. As Mayor Scott said, we aren't having council meetings that allow the public to necessarily attend just because of COVID-19 restrictions. However, there are plenty of ways to get involved, whether it's sending an email or joining as part of the teleconference. So please do participate in that. That's a special council meeting on Tuesday, July 28th. There will be other opportunities to engage prior to that. One will actually be coming up in a few moments when this town hall ends. For those of you who are joining us on the phone, it will go to a voicemail, so you'll have the opportunity to leave a message and share your thoughts as part of this community conversation. As well, on Thursday, we have a Facebook Live at 2 p.m. That's Thursday, July 23rd, so please join us. That's at our Facebook page, at the RMWB Facebook page. And of course, if you want more information on this, whether it's the Improving Resiliency Report or participating more in engagement and participating in our forums, please visit participate.rmwb.ca. On that note, I would like to thank all our panelists, from Mayor Scott to Jamie Doyle, our CAO, Matthew Huff, our Deputy CAO, from Planning and Development, Brad McMurdo and Christopher Booth, our legal counsel, Kurt Stillwell, and of course, Jen McManus from the Red Cross. Thanks very much for joining us, and thank you to our residents and those who called in and listened in online for being part of this community conversation. Have a great evening.